Chapter 8 of 10 from Infinity by Paul W. Fairman. Brent Taber stood in front of the desk of authority and said, "Mr. Porter, I don't think you people realize the gravity of this situation." Porter's eyes were frosty. "And just what gives you that idea?" "The fact that I'm being hamstrung at every turn. Men I assigned to search out the last android have been taken off the job, transferred away from me without notice." "You speak of being hamstrung." Porter pronounced the term with an inflection of disgust, as though it were a vulgarism no gentleman would use. "You say we do not realize the gravity of the situation. Perhaps we realize it far more than you do. It may be that your activities have been indirectly curtailed because you have not recognized the vital need of harmony in government." "Are you telling me Crane's ego is still smarting?" "Senator Crane did, in the spirit of cooperation, mention certain leaks in your department." "What in hell are you talking about?" "I'd watch my tone if I were you, Taber. You aren't talking to one of your leg men now." Taber's teeth came tight together. "I'm sorry. Let me repeat the question. Exactly what was the nature of the leak to which the senator referred?" "A tape, transcribed at one of your top secret meetings." Taber's fist closed and opened. "I guess maybe I have been lax," he said softly. Porter, grimly happy to have made his point, went on. "As to policy up above, I'll be quite frank. We have not necessarily gone along with your theory that the so-called androids were from outer space." "Then where do you think they originated?" "We have put data into the calculators on that point. So far, the results have been inconclusive." "That's too bad." "Your sarcasm is uncalled for. I am quite willing to tell you, however, that we have been proceeding in the matter. You are aware, no doubt, of the recent space shot that ended disastrously?" "Who isn't?" Still insistent upon treating Taber like a backward child, Porter said, "The missile was safely launched and made 5 orbits and then suffered destruction. There was a lot of newspaper copy written on the failure, a lot of questions asked as to the cause." "The releases were entirely true," Porter said with prim severity. "There was malfunction of crucial units under stress. But another phase was not made public. The astronauts' mission, one of them at least, was to hunt outer space for foreign bodies of any description." "What did he report?" "Nothing. I recall a story printed by some Washington columnist that some of the code picked up from the missile was not translated for the press. This, he stated, in view of the administration's current open-end policy on such matters, was strange." "If you're implying that we censored certain information, that's quite true. In the public interest." "To keep scientific information out of Russian hands?" "In this case, no. The astronaut fell victim to a psychological stress that was unforeseen. What he sent made no sense whatever. We blame the medical men for not finding the flaw in his psyche." "And I would be entirely out of line in assuming he did discover hostile foreign bodies and was destroyed by them?" "Entirely," Porter snapped. Brent Taber's eyes were stony. "But I am to assume that you're asking for my resignation." Now Porter shrugged. "If that is the way you see it, I can, of course, only tender my regrets." "Well, you won't have to. I'm not resigning." The sharp declaration made Porter blink. It's rather unusual that a man, after a vote of no confidence— "To hell with that. If a tape got out of my office, it's my fault. I'll grant that. But there's more to this. I'm willing to bet the man who told you was the same one who engineered the steal." "That's ridiculous. Are you accusing Senator Crane of—" "I'm accusing an opportunist demagogue of playing fast and loose with national safety to further his own ends and salve his ego. I'm accusing the men above me of being too weak-kneed to back their own against outside interference." "I'll stand for no insults from you, Taber." "You'll take it and like it," Brent Taber said savagely. "You'll take it because you can't knock me out of my office overnight. It will take time. You've got to go up through the command, and you'll have to go pretty high before you'll find anyone who'll do it with the stroke of a pen. Nobody wants to stick their neck out." "Of course," Porter replied icily. "If you care to keep functioning as a discredited person, I can and I will. I'd be a coward if I didn't." Porter was obviously disappointed, but he shrugged. "That's your privilege. You, of course, will not be taken off the payroll." "The payroll be damned. Send my checks to the Red Cross." and Brent Taber strode out of Porter's office, a man who stood alone in the Washington jungle of clashing ambitions, of purposes and cross-purposes, but a man who had no thought of quitting. After Brent left, Porter put through a call to Senator Crane's office. "So while severing Brent Taber from official activity would be rather difficult, Senator, I have, in the interests of efficiency, withdrawn most of his facilities." "A wise move, Porter. A very wise move. By the way, Senator, that hydroelectric project on the Panamint River your conservation people have in the works, I'm quite interested in it." "Is that so?" Crane asked guardedly. "Yes. Perhaps because of my experience along those lines in South America. I consider it a great opportunity to serve, and I understand the administrator's post is still open." Porter's tone was vague. "Yes, I believe it is. Of course, I'm quite happy where I am, you understand. I'm not looking for a change. However, the challenge does intrigue me. I'll give you a ring, Porter. Just sit tight until you hear from me." After hanging up, Porter sat back and wondered. He tried to analyze the tone in which Crane had made the promise to call. It had been falsely cordial, beyond a doubt. Maybe Crane figured Taber's scalp was too small a price to pay for the hydroelectric plum. Well, in that case, Porter philosophized, he hadn't lost a great deal. It was all in the game. Frank Corsom was confused and troubled by the changes that continued to come over Rhoda Kane. He could not quite put his finger on the start of it, but as he saw her now, a scant 2 weeks after the incident of the man with 2 hearts, he could clearly see the changes. Where she had been a beautiful, poised, self-controlled woman, she was now more nervous and quick of movement, brighter of eye, full of a new restless energy he could not account for. Also, the dominance in their affair had shifted. He had always, it seemed, been the dominant factor, in that Rhoda had continually catered to his moods and bent to the winds of his own unrest and dissatisfaction. But one evening, when he was free of duty at Park Hill, Rhoda came home and entered the apartment without glancing toward the double-width sofa by the window. Frank, stretched out with a drink in his hand, watched her as she took her key out of the lock and put it back in her purse. He was struck by the fact that with this new personality that had become part of her, she was even more attractive than before. A glow had been added. The quiet, dignified, statuesque beauty of before had been mysteriously vitalized by a new kind of inner life. She turned from the door, and looking into the bright glare of the 8-foot windows, she saw him on the sofa and took a quick step forward. "Oh," she cried, "it's you." "Of course it's me." Rhoda stopped dead, and Frank was sure that the look of eagerness died as suddenly as it had been born. "Well, good Lord, who were you expecting?" Rhoda laughed. "You just surprised me, that's all." "Well, you gave me the keys to your apartment. Wasn't I supposed to use them?" "Of course, silly." She came across the room and sat down on the sofa beside him. She bent down and kissed him. "Golly," he said, sarcastically enthusiastic. "That was about as stimulating as a meeting between 2 dead fish." "Frank, for heaven's sake, what's got into you lately?" "I think that question should be reversed. What's got into you?" "I think you're being unreasonable." "Am I? Is it unreasonable to wonder why you did a complete about-face?" "I don't understand." "You understand. I've brought it up before. You spent weeks convincing me I ought to carry through with my internship and establish a practice. You said the time element didn't make any difference to you. You talked me out of the silly idea I had about cashing in on the man with 2 hearts. I admitted it was a silly idea. I turned away from it completely. Then you did the world's fastest about-face and began asking questions. You began pushing me in the direction you'd been arguing against." Rhoda refused to match his serious mood. She ran a playful hand through his hair. "A woman has a right to change her mind, hasn't she?" "Oh, stop it, Rhoda. You're avoiding the issue." "All right. I still maintain I have a right to change my mind. But in making it all seem completely unnatural, you neglected to mention why you changed yours. Because a man named Brent Taber slapped your wrist like a little boy and scared you. It wasn't my influence that turned you around and started you walking the other way. It was a big man from Washington who said naughty, naughty, and suddenly you were a nice little intern again, afraid to ask questions. It was more dangerous than you know, Rhoda." "Oh, I'm sure it was." "Do you want another drink?" "No." Frank looked out the window and scowled. "Rhoda, There was something I didn't tell you about that affair. Was there? I'll bet you told Brent Taber, though. It was what brought Brent Taber into it. There was a murder in my room. And when Brent Taber came on the scene, Rhoda stopped and stared down at him. What did you say? A man was killed in my room. The man with the broken leg. He didn't just go on his way as I told you. He got his throat cut in my room. Rhoda continued to stare. And you didn't tell me about it. Brent Taber told me to keep my mouth shut. I suppose if Brent Taber had said, I don't want you to see that woman again, you wouldn't even have dropped around to say goodbye. Rhoda, you're being unreasonable. Unreasonable to expect the man who says he loves me to confide in me? All right, I was wrong. What happened is this. When William Matson was ready to leave Park Hill, he had no place to go, so I took him down to my room. I went back to the hospital and Les King contacted me. He said William Matson was really a man named Sam Baker who'd disappeared from his home in upstate New York 10 years ago. We went down to see him and found him sitting in a chair with his throat cut. You've been involved in a murder and you didn't say a single solitary word. Rhoda, I said I was sorry. I didn't see anything about it in the papers. I'm sure it wasn't on any of the newscasts. Of course it wasn't. The police didn't even question me. I called the police and they came. 2 prowl car men. Then they told Les and me to wait. We waited, and after a while this Brent Taber came in. He told us to go home and keep our mouths shut. Later we were called downtown and Taber talked to us. He told you to go home, Rhoda said sarcastically. You also said the man was killed in your room. Just where is your home, Mr. Corson? I came here, Rhoda. I spent that night here. With a possible murder charge hanging over your head, you came here and didn't say a word. Frank sprang up from the couch and turned, scowling. God damn it. Don't you believe me? Do you think I'm lying? I don't know what to believe. I just feel betrayed. But something else is more important. What? You acted like a child. Just because some man appeared out of nowhere, you said, yes, sir, and no, sir, and sorry, sir, and walked away. Frank, I'm ashamed of you. In quick anger, his hand came back as though to slap her, but he dropped it to his side and strode across the room and picked up his jacket. And so now you're walking out again. You just can't face up to anything, can you, Dr. Corson? He turned on her, his eyes blazing. All right, maybe everything you say is true. Maybe I've seesawed and acted like a kid. If I have, it's because of you. The thing in the village had nothing to do with me changing my mind about going into research. I did it because I thought you wanted me to. Now Rhoda was on her feet too, her patrician nostrils flaring. Well, don't do me any favors. From now on, I wouldn't dream of it. As he pulled on his jacket, Rhoda sat down on the sofa and lit a cigarette. I'm convinced that if you'd gone along with Les King, you would have been on the right road. King wasn't frightened off by a man who said he represented the government. He saw a chance to make some money and is probably going ahead with it right now. I don't give a damn what Les King is doing. Of course not. But there's another little thing you overlooked. Don't you suppose this Brent Taber will toss that murder right back into your lap if it suits his purpose? The body was in your room. You're probably the chief suspect. So you sit back and let Brent Taber play whatever game he's got in mind. And if it goes wrong, Frank Corson gets picked up for murder. It can't possibly happen that way. Why not? Who is Brent Taber really? I told you. A government man. What government? Where can you get in touch with him? I don't know. He gave me a phone number in case I ever saw a certain man again. What man? Rhoda, they aren't men at all. They're androids. Rhoda froze and stared at him in consternation. You actually believe that fairy tale? Frank, I just don't understand you. I told you about it before. But for the life of me, I didn't think you took it seriously. I just didn't care. I'd had it. I wanted out. But you're involved in it out to your neck. And if you had any guts, you'd face Taber and make him tell you all the facts and what's behind them. I've no intention of calling him. I guess that's the rock we split on then, Rhoda said coldly. She couldn't understand herself, even while she knew deep down that she wanted more information for him, John Dennis. Any other reason or excuse she used was a sham, a self-delusion. If she expected a protest, she didn't get it. Rhoda took a long, calm drag on her cigarette. She ground it into the ashtray. She raised her eyes and looked levelly at Frank. Very well. he said finally. "It was nice knowing you." "Shut the door quietly on the way out," she retorted. He stared at her, his face revealing nothing. He turned, went to the door, and opened it. He looked back. She had not moved. He left without a word. Rhoda Kane lit another cigarette. She stared out across the East River at the expensive view that went with her high-rent apartment. She got up and went to the liquor cabinet and made herself a drink. She was back on the sofa when a key turned in the lock. The door opened. Frank Corson came in, walked to her, and stood looking down at her. There was misery in his face, a beaten look in his eyes. "You knew I couldn't do it." "Couldn't do what, sweet?" "Walk out on you. I'm in love with you, goddammit. If I stayed away tonight, I'd be back tomorrow." Rhoda set her glass down and held out her arms. "Darling," she whispered, "you wouldn't have had to. I'd have been down in the village after you." He kissed her hungrily, and she pressed her hand against the back of his head, holding his mouth tight to hers. His hand slipped inside her blouse. She laid her own hand on it and held it firm. "It's for your own good, darling, that I want you to contact this Taber and demand what you're entitled to. You have a right to know. If you don't find out, there might be a policeman at your door any minute of the day or night." "I'll call him. And if he tells you it's none of your business, stand up to him." "I will." She allowed his hand to go on with its exploring now. His finger touched her nipple, played with it. She closed her eyes as his mouth again sought hers. "Darling," she murmured. But she was speaking to a man who had come from nowhere and had identified himself only as John Dennis. She had no number at which to call him. She could only wait until he returned again, if he ever did. She thought, "Oh God, John Dennis, why do you turn away from me? Why did you strip me naked and look at me as if I were a statue? Will you come back again? Please come back and make love to me." She felt Frank Corson unsnapping her brassiere. She closed her eyes and lay back and waited, and for all the effect he had on her, Frank Corson could have been a statue. At the last moment she insisted, "Remember, Frank, you've got to find out everything." End of chapter 8.